Okay, taxes. Everybody loves taxes, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe not the most fun thing to talk about. But what if I told you that we could maybe turn taxes into like a strategic advantage, especially if you're doing business in Brazil?
Oh, a strategic advantage with taxes. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
All right, well, today we are going to deep dive into this blog post, and it is by, let me see if I can pronounce this correctly, Steve's Jr.
Yeah, a Steve's Jr., Brazilian tax expert extraordinaire.
Exactly, and he's got me really thinking differently about how AI is changing the game.
Ooh, AI and taxes. Spicy combo.
It is, it is. So this blog post is titled, and let me try my Portuguese again. It's called Planeamento Tributário com ChatGPT para Eficiência Fiscal.
All right, for our non-Portuguese speaking listeners, break that down for us.
Yeah, so basically it means tax planning with ChatGPT for fiscal efficiency.
Okay. Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
Yeah, and it was published just last week on January 20th, 2025, so it's very current, and it's already getting a lot of buzz.
Always good to be on the cutting edge.
Yes, exactly. And as Steve Jr., in this post, he's basically arguing that ChatGPT is like having this secret weapon for businesses.
A secret weapon. Now you've got my attention.
Right, especially when you're trying to navigate, Brazil's famously complex tax system.
Yeah, Brazil's tax code is a beast. I can only imagine the headaches it causes.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on. So imagine you're running a small business in Brazil.
Okay, I'm picturing it. What kind of business?
I mean, maybe like a tech startup in Sao Paulo,
Yeah.
and you're trying to make smart decisions about your finances.
Yeah.
But the tax regulations, they're so dense, they're constantly changing.
It's like trying to hit a moving target blindfolded.
Right. It's really hard to keep up.
Yeah.
So that is where ChatGPT comes in. Is Steve Jr. is saying it's like having a simulator.
Oh, a simulator, so you
Online.
can test out different scenarios without actually having to, do them in real life and risk any repercussions.
Exactly. You can kind of game it out. So instead of drowning in paperwork and legal jargon,
Which, let's be honest, is most people's experience with taxes.
right, totally. You could ask ChatGPT something like, hey, what happens if the ICMS tax rate changes?
ICMS, just a refresher for our listeners, that's like a value-added tax on goods and services in Brazil, right?
Exactly. It's a big deal for businesses there.
Huge.
And with ChatGPT, you could actually see, like, how these changes could potentially affect your bottom line.
That kind of foresight is powerful, not just reacting to changes, but planning ahead with different scenarios in mind. It's like having a crystal ball, but for taxes.
Right. It's like a tax crystal ball.
Yeah.
And he even says it's not just for big corporations.
Because we always think, oh, it's the big guys who have the resources, the fancy software, the teams of lawyers.
Exactly right. But the blog post actually talks about how ChatGPT could be super helpful even for businesses under the Simples National regime. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, Simples National. It's like a simplified tax system for small and micro businesses in Brazil.
Exactly. So even smaller companies can leverage this.
Leveling the playing field a bit, which is always a good thing.
I think so too. And honestly, like, this is just scratching the surface, I feel like. What really blew my mind was that ChatGPT can even help businesses find tax incentives.
Tax incentives, those magical loopholes that can save you a bundle.
Yes. But they're often, like, buried in this complex legislation.
Yeah, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right?
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't even know where to start.
It's so true. But the blog post, it gives some really good examples of prompts you could use.
Like, give me an example. What kind of prompts are we talking about?
You could say something like, what tax incentives are available for tech companies in Sao Paulo?
Okay, very specific.
Or how can exporters access specific tax benefits?
So you're basically using ChatGPT to unlock these hidden treasures that you might otherwise completely miss.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about saving time and potentially a lot of money. I bet so many businesses leave money on the table simply because they don't even know these incentives exist.
I think you're probably right, yeah. And the blog post doesn't stop there. It also goes into how ChatGPT can really streamline tax compliance.
Streamline tax compliance. I'm listening.
Because I know for a lot of businesses, that's just a huge pain point.
Huge. It's the paperwork, the deadlines, the fear of making a mistake.
It's a lot.
Mm.
And with ChatGPT, you can automate reports and even get guidance on how to fill out those tax documents.
So it's not just about strategizing, but it's about actually taking action.
Exactly.
This could really be a game changer in terms of efficiency.
I think so too. And I think, freeing up time for business owners and their teams to focus on other things.
Right, the things they're actually passionate about, not just drowning in paperwork.
Totally. So imagine, asking ChatGPT to create a monthly report template for a company under the Simple's national regime.
Okay, so you're basically getting like a customized template tailored to your specific needs.
Exactly. Or even just something like, explain the process for filling out the Declaration of Federal Tax Debts.
The Declaration of Federal Tax Debts, or DCTF as it's lovingly known in Brazil. A crucial document.
Essential, yes.
So it's like having like a virtual assistant, like a tax expert on call 247.
Right, and they never get tired of answering your questions.
And they don't charge by the hour.
Right, exactly.
But, even with all these amazing benefits, I gotta ask, how does ChatGPT keep up with Brazil's tax laws? Because they're notoriously, like, fluid.
They're constantly changing.
Yeah, it's a moving target. So how does this thing stay updated?
That is where it gets, like, super impressive. The blog post really highlights how ChatGPT can actually be your guide through all of these changes.
Okay, I'm picturing like a trusty GPS navigating you through the treacherous terrain of Brazilian tax law.
I love that, yeah. So imagine being able to ask, like, summarize the changes to the Symbols National Table for 2025.
Okay, so very specific.
Very specific, yeah. Or something like, explain how the new ISS rules impact service sector companies.
The ISS, just to clarify, that's the municipal tax on services. Another fun acronym to add to the mix.
Yes, lots of acronyms.
And so with ChatGPT, you can just like plug in these questions and get like real-time updates on what's changing, what it means for your business.
It's amazing, right? It's almost like having a direct line to the tax authorities, but in a much friendlier and less intimidating way.
Way less intimidating. I like it.
Steve Jr. even gives this real-life example. And he talks about a small bakery in Rio de Janeiro.
A bakery. Okay, this should be good.
And they used ChatGPT to figure out like how new regulations on ingredients, like sourcing their ingredients, were going to impact them.
I see it. Okay.
And they were able to like adjust their supply chain.
Yeah.
And they actually ended up saving money.
Wow. So it's not just theory. There are actual real-world businesses seeing real-world benefits.
Exactly. And I think this example, it brings up a really interesting question. Could this type of AI tool, like ChatGPT, could it actually level the playing field for smaller businesses?
Because normally it's the big guys who have access to this kind of sophisticated advice and analysis, right?
Right.
So could this be a game changer for smaller businesses to really compete on a more even footing?
Yeah, it's a big question. And it makes you wonder, like, is this just the beginning? We're just scratching the surface of what AI could do in the world of taxes.
Oh, I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. But before we get too carried away with the future, let's dive back into the blog post and see what other insights Estes Jr. has for us.
Sounds good to me. Let's see what else this tax guru has to offer. So, we're talking about all these amazing possibilities, but I can't help but think about, like, the human element here.
Yeah.
What happens to the tax professionals?
Like, are they going to be replaced by robots?
Exactly. Are we all going to be out of a job?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And Estes Jr. actually addresses this directly in his blog post.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
So he actually argues that, like, ChatGPT won't necessarily replace tax professionals.
Okay, so, like, not a robot takeover just yet.
Not quite, not quite. But instead, he kind of sees it as more of a tool.
A tool?
Yeah, a tool that can actually make tax professionals even more valuable.
More valuable? How so?
Well, think about it. If ChatGPT can handle, like, a lot of those routine tasks,
Right, all the tedious stuff nobody enjoys doing anyway.
Exactly, like the data entry, the basic calculations, all that.
Yeah, the stuff that makes your eyes glaze over.
Totally. And if all that's taken care of, then that frees up tax professionals to really focus on the things that require, like, human expertise.
Right, like strategy, complex analysis, the stuff AI can't quite grasp yet.
Exactly.
So it's like ChatGPT is taking care of the grunt work, allowing tax professionals to step into more of a strategic advisory role.
Yeah, like that.
It's like the difference between like a data entry clerk and a financial guru.
Yeah, totally. And it's Steve Jr., he makes another interesting point too, about how ChatGPT can help tax professionals stay ahead of the curve, with the constantly evolving world of tax law.
Oh, right, because the laws are always changing. It's like a never-ending game of catch-up.
It really is. So he gives this example of a tax advisor who used ChatGPT to analyze a new regulation.
Okay, new regulation. What was it about?
It was about tax deductions for renewable energy investments.
Oh, interesting. Very topical.
Yeah, and the advisor, they were able to then, like, proactively reach out to all their clients.
Okay, so they're like one step ahead of the game, providing valuable insights before their clients even ask.
Exactly. They're like, hey, this new regulation just came out. This is how it might affect you. Here's what you need to know.
I love that. It's like ChatGPT is turning tax professionals into like these proactive advisors instead of reactive problem solvers.
Totally. Yeah, it's a shift in how they approach their work.
It's almost like ChatGPT is giving them a superpower.
I like that, yeah. It's not about being replaced. It's about being enhanced.
Right, it's about using technology to your advantage to do your job even better.
Absolutely. But, obviously, no technology is perfect. And as Steve Jr. acknowledges that, there are some potential downsides.
Oh, for sure. Like what kind of downsides are we talking about?
Well, like he talks about human oversight is still really important.
Of course, you can't just blindly trust the machine, right?
You got to make sure the information is accurate.
It's a tool, not a replacement for human judgment.
Exactly. And you have to use it responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. I think the key takeaway here is that ChatGPT, while it's a very powerful tool, it's still just a tool.
It's not a magic bullet.
No, it's not going to solve all your tax problems overnight.
But it can definitely help.
Definitely. So now, thinking back to something we discussed earlier, ChatGPT's ability to help businesses keep up with changes in tax legislation, that seems particularly relevant here.
Yeah, it's crucial, especially in a place like Brazil, where the laws are, constantly in flux.
Always changing. It's hard to keep up.
Remember that example we talked about earlier with the Simples National Table?
Yeah, the Simples National Table. Remind me, what was that all about again?
So that table is updated every year.
Every year. Wow.
Yeah, and it's got all sorts of, rates and thresholds and all that.
So it can have a big impact on small businesses, especially.
Totally. And Steve's Jr., he gives this really compelling example of how ChatGPT can help businesses stay on top of these changes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the example?
He talks about this small clothing retailer.
A clothing retailer, okay.
And they were just having a really hard time trying to figure out how a change in the Simples National Table was going to impact their taxes for the year.
I can imagine that stuff can be really confusing.
Right. And they were worried about making a mistake.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to underpay their taxes and get hit with a penalty.
Big time. So they turned to ChatGPT.
Of course they did. What did they ask?
They basically said, explain the changes to the Simples National Table for 2025 and how it affects a clothing retailer with an annual revenue of X amount. They were very specific.
Okay, so very targeted question.
Very targeted, and ChatGPT delivered.
It did?
Yeah. Gave them a clear, concise summary.
Nice, easy to understand.
Easy to understand. Highlighted the specific implications for their business.
Wow, so they were able to adjust their tax planning accordingly and avoid any potential issues.
Exactly. It took all the stress and guesswork out of it.
That's incredible. It really shows how AI can provide peace of mind for business owners, especially when it comes to something as, complex and sometimes scary as taxes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, I think it goes back to that idea of leveling the playing field. Giving smaller businesses the same kind of insights that, bigger corporations might have.
Right, democratizing access to information.
Exactly. And it's not just about staying compliant. It's about optimizing.
Yeah. Right, finding those opportunities to legally and ethically minimize your tax burden.
Totally, totally. And as Steve's Jr., he has another great example. This time he's focusing on the ISS.
The ISS, the Municipal Tax on Services, for those who need a reminder.
Yes, thank you. And he talked about how ChatGPT can help businesses in the service sector, really understand these sometimes complex rules and regulations that apply to them.
Yeah, because ISS regulations can vary so much depending on where you are.
Totally. So imagine you're like a consultant.
Okay, I'm a consultant. I've got clients all over Brazil.
All over Brazil.
So I need to understand the ISS rules in every single municipality.
Every single one.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, no one has time for that.
But with ChatGPT, it becomes a lot easier.
Okay, so how would I use ChatGPT to solve this problem?
Well, you could ask something like, what are the ISS regulations for consulting services in Sao Paulo?
Okay, so very specific.
Very specific. Or even, how did the ISS rules differ between like Rio de Janeiro and Belo Horizonte?
so I can compare and contrast different locations.
Exactly. It's like having this instant access to a library of tax information.
Talk about a time saver
Right.
and a stress saver, frankly.
Right. It allows you to just focus on your work, focus on your clients, and not get bogged down in all this tax stuff.
Working smarter, not harder, as they say.
Exactly. And I think, this example just perfectly illustrates the main point that is Steve Jr. is making throughout the blog post. It's really about how AI can empower businesses,
Big and small.
big and small, to really navigate this complex world of taxes.
Right, to take control, to make informed decisions, and not be intimidated by the system.
To feel more confident, in their ability to handle their taxes.
Confidence is key. And, it makes me wonder, what does all this mean for the future of tax planning? Not just in Brazil, but, like, globally. What does this mean for everyone?
That is the question, isn't it? And I think that leads us perfectly into our next segment. All right, so we've talked a lot about how ChatGPT is already making waves in Brazil when it comes to taxes.
Yeah, some pretty exciting stuff happening there.
It is, but let's zoom out a little bit.
Okay, bigger picture.
Bigger picture, yeah. What does all this mean for the future of tax planning? Not just in Brazil, but like globally.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Like, are we witnessing the start of something truly transformative?
Right.
I mean, for centuries, taxes have been this complex system managed by experts. A lot of mystery, a lot of, confusion for the average person.
And now suddenly we have AI tools like ChatGPT that can demystify some of this stuff.
Yeah, they can break it down, make it understandable, even, dare I say, fun? Okay, maybe not fun, but at least less painful.
Definitely less painful.
But I think, as with any new technology, we need to be mindful of the potential downsides.
Right, right. What kind of challenges are we talking about here?
Well, one concern that comes to mind is the potential for bias.
Bias in the algorithms.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, these AI models are trained on massive amounts of data.
Right. They're learning from what we feed them.
And if that data contains, inherent biases, well, those biases could be reflected in the advice and insights that ChatGPT provides.
So then it's not really objective advice.
Right, exactly. So how do we ensure that these AI tools are actually fair and impartial, especially when we're talking about something as sensitive as taxes?
That's a good question. Is there a way to control that?
Well, I think human oversight is going to be absolutely crucial. We can't just blindly trust the machine. We need checks and balances.
So involving tax professionals in the process.
Absolutely, yes. Not just as users of the technology, but also as overseers, guardians of fairness, if you will.
So almost like you have to train people, tax professionals, not just how to use the tools, but also how to critically evaluate what's coming out of them.
Absolutely. We need a new generation of tax professionals who understand both tax law and the nuances of AI and data analysis.
It's almost like you need a hybrid approach, like the best of human expertise combined with the power of AI.
I love that, yeah. Like a dynamic duo, each bringing their own unique strengths to the table.
Fighting tax crime.
Exactly. And I think this collaboration, this human AI partnership is going to be essential, not just for ensuring fairness, but also for navigating the increasingly complex world of tax regulations.
Because taxes, let's face it, they're not getting any simpler.
No, especially with, businesses operating across borders and all these digital transactions blurring the lines between physical and virtual economies. It's a whole new ballgame.
It really is. And do you think AI will actually be essential? You can't play the game without it?
I think it's heading that way. To stay compliant, to stay competitive, AI tools like ChatGPT, I think they're going to be indispensable.
Okay. Wow. That's a big statement.
It is. And it makes you think, right? What about individuals?
Oh, yeah. We've been talking about businesses, but how does this affect everyday people?
Could we see a future where, everyone has access to their own personalized AI tax advisor?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure out all the forms and deductions yourself, you just, have a conversation with an AI that understands your specific situation.
Exactly. No more sifting through confusing websites or trying to decipher tax jargon. Just a friendly AI guiding you every step of the way.
That's a very appealing future.
It is. It could lead to a much more efficient and equitable tax system.
Where everyone, regardless of their income or their background, they have the support they need.
Exactly. That's the goal, right? To make taxes less of a burden, less of a mystery.
It sounds very utopian.
It does. But, even in this utopian vision, there are still some potential downsides.
Oh, right, right. Always a catch.
Yeah, data privacy, for example.
Oh, yeah, huge issue.
Huge issue. If these AI tools are accessing our financial information, we need to be sure that information is protected.
And not being misused.
Absolutely. And what about job displacement, right?
Oh, yeah. If AI can do a lot of the tasks that, tax professionals currently do.
Just what happens to those jobs?
Right, right. Big questions.
Big questions. But I tend to be optimistic, you know. I think rather than replacing jobs, AI is going to transform them.
So it's not humans versus AI. It's more like humans plus AI
Exactly.
working together.
To create a better system.
Exactly. And I think, that's the message that I really hope people take away from this whole deep dive.
I agree. What would you say is like the key takeaway?
I would say we're at the beginning of something really exciting, in the world of tax planning. We have the potential to create a system that's more efficient, more equitable, more accessible, but it's going to take a lot of careful consideration, collaboration, and really thinking about the ethical implications of using these powerful tools. I think that's a great takeaway. And, a huge thank you to Steve Jr. for that really thought-provoking blog post that kind of kicked all this off. If you want to dive deeper into this stuff, you can check out Steve's Jr. on Instagram.
Yeah, he's at Steve's Jr. He's got tons of great content on AI and tax, and I think his work is a really great example of how, innovative thinking can really push boundaries and challenge us to reimagine the possibilities.
Yeah, he's definitely got me thinking differently.
Me too, me too.
So I guess as we wrap up this deep dive, we just want to leave our listeners with one final thought. The future of tax, it's not set in stone.
It's something we're creating.
Yeah, it's being shaped by the choices that we make today. So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's work together to create a tax system that actually works for everyone in this exciting new age of AI.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, folks, keep exploring and keep diving deep.